Okay.
All righty. So we'll do it after the Pickens, but I'll ask you a grade on rounds 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Anyone watching live, we're going to go live here and start with Jacob here in just about 30 seconds or so. All right, we're going to fire up the podcast just about 20, 30 seconds, everybody. Oh, Hendon Hooker goes to the Lions.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing there. I really don't.
Detroit's draft has been interesting.
Yeah.
I like interesting when it's an NFC North team because then I get to criticize it.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, like, Hooker's solid, but, like, that just doesn't play into their, like, it doesn't play into their window or their plans at all, I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll be curious when the next quarterback goes now.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
It might be a while.
Yeah, I would expect so. Wouldn't expect any today, that's for sure.
Oh, no.
All right. Well, all right, everyone, we're going to fire this up here in just a few seconds. You ready, Jacob?
Let's roll.
Okay, let's do it. That's right. Bear down, Bears fans. It's time for another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast, Bears Banter, powered by Windy City Gridiron and SB Nation. It is a draft special, and Jacob Infante, the lead draft analyst for Windy City Gridiron, joins me now because the Chicago Bears have added Tyrique Stevenson with the 56th pick overall. Jacob, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
Bill, I'm doing great. I think that this Tyrique Stevenson was a good one, so I'm a happy camper, that's for sure. So you definitely won't hear me complaining too much in this one.
I think somehow I'm getting the reputation to complain about everything Ryan Poles does. I love this pick. I am a Tyrique Stevenson fan. We're going to get into everything Tyrique Stevenson brings to the table. But first, let's talk about the trade for just 30 seconds here. So the Bears were at 61. They move up to 56. They give up that late 4th round pick they had. Couple people saying the Bears spent a little too much, but if you look at the Jimmy Johnson chart or the Rich Hill chart, the Bears came out on top, but I think if you look at some of the other trades that were made, similar trades in the second round, that the Bears paid maybe more than other teams did. But I'm a fan of Stevenson. Clearly, I think they thought he wasn't going to slide those last few spots. I have no problem with the trade up. What about you?
I don't have a problem with it either. I mean, honestly, you're looking at the corners who were on the board at the time, and I'd really say it's either one of Tyrique Stevenson and Darius Rush are the only two guys who actually kind of fit that mold that the Bears are looking for at corner. So, I mean, I have a higher film grade on Stevenson. Obviously, the Bears did too to be able to make this pick. I'm definitely a fan of it, though. I think that you're looking at someone who's going to step in right away and, make a big impact. And we'll get into like the specifics with him. But the Bears needed a corner. This was good value from a positional perspective, from a pure player talent perspective. So if you really want to secure your guy and it's, just a minor trade up, you're not giving up too much. You still have it, the first pick in the 5th round, first pick in the 4th round, and a mid 5th rounder. So this is far from the end of the world, honestly. I'm okay with being with giving up one of the last picks in the 4th round to be able to secure your guy.
Yeah, and look, like you said, they needed a cornerback. I think a lot of us thought they would go out in free agency and get a veteran corner out there. I'm not personally comfortable with Kindle Vildor being your only option as your third cornerback. We all like Jalen Johnson. We saw some ups and downs, but I think more ups at the end of the year with Kyler Gordon, and you just didn't have that third guy there. Plus the fact that, let's be honest, Jalen Johnson's entering the last year of his contract, and we don't know where him and the Bears are in terms of, if they're close to an extension, if the Bears want to extend him. We haven't heard a lot about what Jalen Johnson's future is with this team. The only thing I've heard about Jalen Johnson is that he wants to get paid. And he wants to get paid like a top end elite corner. And it'll be curious to see if the Bears are willing to do that. So the fact that you bring a guy in like Tyrique Stevenson that can, one, give you 3 legitimate starting NFL corners. I think he steps in and starts this year. I think he's going to jump Vildor in August. And I think the fact that you also have, someone in case Jalen jets, you have a legitimate guy there. So I'm a fan of this move from a lot of different points, but why don't I give you the floor and kind of give me your rundown on what you think Tyrique Stevenson's going to bring to the Bears?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about Jalen, especially. You don't know if you're going to be able to extend him going forward. Good player, good starting cornerback. Is he elite? I don't think so. If so, I wouldn't pay him that elite caliber corner money if that's what he wants. But regardless, in addition to the added leverage that you have there, the nice, little security that you have at corner, by adding Stevenson, you're getting someone who was really the final piece of the puzzle for the Bears secondary for the 2023 season, because you have your 2 safeties locked down. You had 2 of your corners locked down. Who is your one last corner going to be? Now it's going to be Tyrique Stevenson. And from a pure physical perspective and just the way he plays the game, he fits Chicago like a glove. I mean, he's a bigger cornerback, well-built, just a muscular guy, physical player. I think he's good in man coverage. He's good in press. I think he does a good job of maintaining good hand activity through receiver stems without coming off as like too grabby and, being at risk of penalties. He's a safe amount of physical, if that makes sense. And I think that you're also looking at, in addition to that physicality, someone who can compete at the catch point, someone who's not afraid to jump a route, to crash, who's not afraid of contact. And that shows in his tackling ability too. I think he's one of the better tackling cornerbacks in this class. And I'm also looking at just the route recognition ability. I think he's an intelligent corner. He does a good job of staying within a receiver, just being able to, like they use the hip pocket term to, be able to stay in a receiver's hip pocket. I think that Stevenson does that very well. Processes what he sees quickly, is aggressive and acting on it. And more often than not, he makes the right read. So just a rock solid corner. I think that out of the day 2 picks the Bears made, I'm the most confident that Stevenson's at least a solid starter in the league. He's the highest floor of the bunch for me. And yes, he doesn't, he ran very well at the combine, especially for his size. Deep speed is solid. Hip fluidity is solid. I think that's part of the reason he dropped to round 2 is just because he's not an elite athlete. He's decent, he's not necessarily going to wow anybody in terms of how fast he can change direction. And he might struggle a little bit against speedier receivers, but I think that he fits the Chicago mold very well. He's far from a bad enough lateral athlete that I'm worried about him at the next level. I just think, he's not elite in that. It's fine. Not too many people are. So I'm a fan of what Stevenson can do. Definitely an outside corner. I think he can play the boundary well. He can play the field well. I reckon he's probably going to play a little bit more in the field, at least in 2023. Depending on what they do with Jalen Johnson going forward, we'll see what Stevenson's role is from there. But I think this kicks Kyler inside as the nickel corner, and you're going to see a lot of them in 2023 in just that, the 3 cornerbacks. You're not going to see a ton of base. Most of the time, you're going to have 3 corners at least out there. So you're going to see a lot of Stevenson, and this doesn't mean anything in terms of affecting Kyler, in my opinion. And it remains to be seen what this means with Jalen Johnson, but I do think that Stevenson was a rock solid pick.
Yeah, and look, regardless of what happens with Jalen Johnson after this year, it's irrelevant for 2023. The Bears have 3 legitimate corners, I think, that are going to be able to start. And that was actually going to be my next question was, for Bears fans that didn't know, is Stevenson more of an outside or inside guy? So with Kyler Gordon, as we saw the Bears kind of bounce him around a lot, especially the first half of the season, trying to figure out where he would excel. And I think that kind of hindered his growth his rookie year of trying to do both early on. You think with this pick here that they're going to settle into Kyler at the nickel and Tyrique and Jalen outside?
Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that, Stevenson especially thrives on the outside. I think he might struggle a bit in quarters, but if you're looking at like a cover 2 especially, I think is a perfect scheme for him. Just the short area quickness. I think that's really where he thrives. It's not so much the deep speed and the deep ability to break and, on a dime like that. It's you have your zone. I'm going to recognize this. I'm going to break on it. So I definitely think Stevenson's going to be an outside guy at the next level, in Chicago for sure. And I'm interested. I hope that the Bears stop, bouncing Kyler Gordon around. I want him to have the opportunity to settle into a role and to be able to, truly iron out his craft.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And one thing I really like about Stevenson's game, outside of just his ability in coverage, is the fact that I think Bears fans are going to love this guy. I think he plays aggressively. He comes up, he hits people. He's this is, look, not to knock Deion Sanders, who's an all-time great, but this is not Deion Sanders who's going to run away from contact. He's not going to be shy with that. I think that's, with kind of what they have with Brisker and stuff, you're going to have a secondary that's not afraid to pop some people. And going one step further with what they did at linebacker with who they brought in. And look, you want to talk about investing in linebacker or not? That's not for this podcast. That they went out and brought a couple really good guys in, especially Edmonds. We know what Edwards can do, and the fact that you got Jack Sanborn there, who is going to be a rock solid Sam. I assume that's how they're going to plan on using him. The back 7 here is really good. I think there is a lot of potential. The front line, the front 4 there for the defense still definitely has some work. And you can go check out the podcasts on Zacch Pickens and Javon Dexter. Those are up on the Windy City Gridiron channel as well. But the back 7, Jacob, to me is really shaping up to be something that is going to be very good for this Bears defense for several years.
No, I'm 100% with you. And, you mentioned all those guys who are good at tackling. The corners, there's not a bad tackling corner in that starting lineup. And Jaquan Brisker, another very good tackler. Eddie Jackson, that's not his forte by any means, but he's gotten better over the years.
Definitely has.
He's struggled a lot early on, but I think that he gets a little too much flack nowadays. He's developed into a competent tackler at safety. And you factor in that. You factor in the linebackers. I think the back 7 looks really good. One of the best, probably one of the most physical secondaries you're going to go up against at the NFL, in the NFC, if not the NFL. And yes, the defensive line, I think, is going to be a big work in progress. And with those draft picks you have, maybe not going to make a massive impact right away. I think that's a bit more playing the long game, developing those guys. But I'm really confident in what the back 7 is going to produce for this Bears defense. And, I think you summed it up very well. Just at the end of the day, just a rock solid group.
Yeah. All right. So there it is, everybody. Endorsement from me, fan of the Tyrique Stevenson pick, but forget what I think. Jacob Infante, who knows what he's talking about, a big fan of the pick as well. Jacob, thanks so much for joining us on Tyrique Stevenson, and appreciate your insight.
No, of course. You give me a little too much credit, but I'm I'm a fan of this pick, and I'm grateful to be able to talk to it here.
All right, that's going to wrap up Bears Banter. Bear down, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Adios. All right, guys, don't go anywhere. We're about to dive into Zacch Pickens here. We're gonna fire that up here in just a few seconds. So stick around. We're gonna talk Zacch Pickens next with Jacob. Are you ready to dive into Pickens, or you need a few seconds to get organized?
I'm just pulling up stats, and then I'm good because I know enough about him as a player, but I didn't remember how he did production.
No problem.
Okay. All right, I'm ready.
All right. boys. All right, here we go. Zacch Pickens pot coming down. That's right. Bear down, Bears fans. It's time for another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast, Bears Banter, powered by Windy City Gridiron and SB Nation. Bill Zimmerman with you. And the Chicago Bears just keep adding players. Tyrique Stevenson, Gervon Dexter, Darnell Wright, all Chicago Bears. And now with the 64th pick, Zacch Pickens, South Carolina defensive tackle, joins the Chicago Bears. Jacob Infante, Windy City Gridiron's lead draft analyst, joins us now. Jacob, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Bill. We keep bouncing around. You got that nice run of picks in. It's out of the way now, so I get to breathe a little bit, at least from my perspective. But yeah, no, I'm living the dream. Honestly, I'm just happy to be here, and really having. We'll dig into the Pickens pick, but I'm cautiously optimistic, I think is the best way to put it with him.
All right. Yeah, I'll be honest. I was expecting, and we're not going to spend too much time on this because I think a lot of times general managers usually go even keel with the picks here. They try and kind of even out, adding to the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Wasn't too surprised they went back-to-back defense after going offense, with Darnell Wright early in round one. I really expected 64 at that point to be an offensive player. But the fact is they go Pickens. Clearly, this is something they're going for here. Defensive line. Go check out the Tyrique Stevenson podcast. We talked about how good this back seven potentially can be here for the next several years. But we talked about the fact that the defensive line is a bit of a work in progress. So we'll kind of talk about how he's going to pair with Dexter. But before we do that, let's kind of give you the floor, as I always do. Kind of give me your thoughts on Zacch Pickens and how he could perform at the next level.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm cautiously optimistic, and the way I say that is because Zacch Pickens' physical tools are extremely impressive. You're looking at he's not as tall as Gervon Dexter, but he has longer arms. He's got bigger hands. Also, just a freak athlete off the ball. Accelerates really well. Powerful at the point of attack. He's got great grip strength that helps him out against the run, but also allows him to push the pocket a little bit as a pass rusher. You're looking at a guy who's got a strong anchor, capable of eating up those gaps in the run game. And a guy who's versatile too. I like him best as a 3-tech defensive tackle, but he's also someone who can play as a 1-tech, maybe play as a true nose. There are some instances where he plays as a 4-tech directly above an offensive tackle. So you can kick him outside, inside, wherever. And I think that really plays into what Chicago's trying to generate along that defensive line. You look at Dexter as a guy who can play 3-tech or 1-tech. Like we mentioned in the episode when we covered Dexter, DeMarcus Lawrence can play inside outside. Now you've got Pickens who can play inside outside. I don't know why I'm blanking more. I've said DeMarcus Walker, but regardless, like a lot of those guys are capable of kicking in as defensive tackles or defensive ends, different alignments, stuff like that. So I think that's going to be the name of the game, that and physical talent. And that's the case with Pickens. I can get into some of the negatives if you want, some of the drawbacks with him, but that's purely from the optimistic perspective. Is this guy's a physical specimen, and if he develops well, he's got a very high ceiling.
Yeah, and the one thing, and I don't watch the tape as closely as you do, but the one thing I noticed when I watched him, I really loved how he got off the ball. I really thought that he got good quickness. He has that ability to really kind of be disruptive right away. I thought that was kind of one thing that was kind of opposite with Dexter, is that kind of that first step, because kind of too upright and all. I think they're kind of opposites there. But I think, the question, and let's get into weaknesses. We got to look at this from both sides, is does he have the frame to really kind of beef up and have the strength to really anchor a defensive line? I know that's a question on him, but is there anything else that may concern you in terms of his future?
Yeah, so I think when you're looking at Pickens, I do think he's better in terms of pad level than Dexter is. I think Dexter, plays too upright fairly often, but I think Pickens still has some room to grow in that regard. There's some instances where he gets it down perfectly. He gets it down pat and he gets his weight underneath him. But there's some times where center of gravity is a little too high. And then, like you mentioned, I maybe want to see him fill out a little more. I don't know necessarily how much more weight he can gain. I think that, the upper body is more powerful than the anchor. I mean, I don't think he's got a weak anchor by any means, but I think a lot of his issues are in from the hips down. I
Okay.
think that's the issue with him is, kind of similar to Dexter. I think the flexibility isn't tremendous. The straight line speed on tape, is very good. He tested very well, but there are some instances where he, waist bends a little bit instead of generating, proper bend in his knees and, being able to, squeeze his way through a gap and, lower the shoulder and stuff like that. I think he's a bit of a work in progress in that regard. The production at the collegiate level wasn't necessarily all that great, but again, you're betting on tools there. You're betting on the straight line quickness. You're betting on the length, the big hands, the powerful hands, and someone who in a vacuum offers a nice blend of speed, high motor, and power. So obviously some technical refinements that he needs to work on. I'd like to see a little bit more pass rushing techniques in his hands as well. I'd like to see him improve in that, but still, I mean, you're looking at a guy who's got, if all goes well, if they're really confident in their defensive line coaching staff, someone who could be the 3 tech that the Bears need.
All right, fascinating, because and that's kind of where I want to go next with this is kind of the defensive alignment and kind of maybe what Poles and Eberflus are kind of looking at big picture. Obviously you want short-term help too. We know the Bears defensive line needs help, but you've got Justin Jones and you've got Andrew Billings. They're both going to be free agents after this year. So that's kind of it for them. You would probably expect that both of them won't be re-signed, with the idea that Dexter and Pickens are going to be the guys in the middle for this team in 2024. So let me ask you this first in the terms of the short term. You kind of talked about both of them and some of the issues they have and the strengths they have. Who do you think will be more ready, if you had to guess, to make more of an impact? I know they're both going to see the field, but who do you think has a chance to have more of an impact this season on the Bears defensive line?
I do think it'll be Dexter. I think that he's, from a hand usage perspective, he's more developed and, he's got better just pure size but as well as the athleticism, as well as, flashes of power, some of the same issues in terms of weight distribution, but I think Dexter just a little bit better in my eyes. But that's not to hate on Pickens by any
No.
means.
You can like both guys. I'm just, who do you think is more ready right now? That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I do think that Dexter, slight edge in terms of how he uses his hands. I think Dexter, just as good of an athlete as Pickens, maybe a little bit better raw power you're looking at with Dexter and better size overall. And I think, adding on to those hands, I think Dexter adds a little bit more immediate value as a pass rusher. I mentioned Dexter has a high ceiling as a pass rusher, but I think that Pickens, as much as he does too, I think that Pickens has a little bit more to go just because his plan as a pass rusher isn't perfect yet. I'd like to see him add a little bit more of, I guess, some counter moves in his arsenal. And if he doesn't win initially with speed or power, how is he going to penetrate the backfield? How's he going to shed this block? So, but yeah, no, I think that Dexter's going to see the field a bit more, but like you mentioned, Justin Jones, Andrew Billings, both of them, their contracts expire next year. So in an ideal world, you're looking at Zacch Pickens and Javon Dexter as the defensive tackle tandem for the Bears in 2024 and going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, let's talk about this in terms of how they, kind of will come together. Because I think when we were talking about Dexter, the Pickens pick had not been made. And I think both of us thought that perhaps this was the idea that this was going to be their 3 tech. And you're sitting there going, I think he's going to be more of a 1 tech at the level. And I think, you don't want to sit there and be like, I don't know if he's going to be a 3 tech. Now you're saying you feel Pickens is going to be more of a 3 tech. Do you think that they're going to be kind of more interchangeable in terms of how they can perform in the interior? Or do you think it makes more sense to have Dexter settle in at the 1 tech and Pickens settle in at the 3 tech?
I think, I mean, you could go either way on that. You could have Pickens as the 1 tech because he played a decent amount there in college. You could have Dexter as the 3 tech. I think he's athletic enough to play there. I just think from Dexter's perspective, his best tape as a pass rusher came at 1 tech. Honestly, what I might see is Dexter fills in as the 3 tech on rundowns, and Billings is the 1 tech on rundowns. And on passing downs, you'll see some Pickens at 3 tech, some DeMarcus Walker at 3 tech, and then 1 tech, you start to see a little bit more of Dexter as well as Billings. And then Justin Jones, factors into the mix at probably a little more 3 tech. But either way, I'm very interested in seeing how they utilize that rotation because they've got some names. It's a much better group than it was last year. Again, I still don't think they have a star in the mix, and I think that that's something where maybe next year, there's some good defensive tackles slated to hit the 2024 class. If you want to get someone with one of those 2 first-round picks or in the second round, I say don't take that off the table. But either way, I still think Dexter and Pickens both have the potential to be rock-solid starters at the next level. Plenty of physical upside to work with both guys. So I see the vision. I see the vision that Poles is going for. I personally, I had an early 4th round grade on Pickens, so maybe not the exact pick I would have made with the first pick in the 3rd round, but I don't hate it. I've certainly been madder or more at some of the Bears picks that have been made in the past. So this isn't Velus Jones for me. Don't worry. This is, I get it. It's not the one I would have made, but I definitely get it. So, it's just a matter of what kind of vision you have with each of these picks.
Yeah, and look, and I think here's the thing: you've got a defensive-minded coach in Matt Eberflus. Justin Fields. They've committed to him, and they've done DJ Moore and Darnell Wright, and they've done some things to kind of boost the offense here. But what you're really seeing, and of course, there's no guarantee that all 3 of these guys are going to pan out for the Bears. There's always an Ego Ferguson in the mix. We get that. So, but if these guys do pan out, what you're really seeing is we're not even into year 2, we're not even into the 2nd season of the Chicago Bears. But what you're seeing here, and I think at a much quicker rate than we saw with Ryan Pace, you're seeing this defense come and take form and take shape. And I think that's it's interesting. It's fun to see. Like you're kind of sitting there going, all right, this is what the secondary is going to look like moving forward. This is what the linebacking core is going to look like moving forward. Here's the defensive tackles moving forward. You got maybe Dominique Robinson can develop outside the edge. They definitely don't have that. Travis Gibson's probably not seeing a 2nd contract here. So they definitely have some questions out on the edge. DeMarcus Walker obviously was a guy they brought in on a 3-year contract. So he's going to be here as well. But you really can see the defense that Matt Eberflus wants really taking shape. Like this is his defense really in 2024, and it really wasn't in 2023. I'm sorry, 2023, and it really wasn't in 2022.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like especially in that one offseason turnover, you're not going to see the entire vision. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 2023. So I'm definitely excited to see what the defensive line especially brings. I know we've talked up the back 7 a whole lot in the Stevenson podcast. We were super complimentary, the secondary and the linebackers. Defensive line, I think you'll see some struggles. I think you certainly will, but I think there's going to be a lot more flashes than there were last year, and there's a lot more to be excited about, not just in 2023, but in the future especially.
All right. Well, obviously we can't do the full draft grade because we've got an entire day and a whole lot of picks still to make for Ryan Poles on day 3. But, these are the big picks here they've made. Obviously they got one at the top of round 4 who could be another potential impact player. But where are you right now? If we just did the old, let's give these picks a letter grade. I know you're a fan of most of these guys, but you still wondered if maybe there was a different direction to go with a couple of these picks. So where are you in terms of a Ryan Poles grade with these first 4 players?
If I had to give a grade this early, I'd probably say a B. I'd say a B. I think that's fair. I'm not like, holy crap, he knocked it out of the park. I'm like jumping up and down. I've been happier with certain draft picks in the past, but there are a lot of these picks I'm like, okay, I get it, and to varying extents, I'm like, all right, that's an awesome pick, or I wouldn't have made that, but I get it. So I mean, with that in mind, there's definitely a type that the Bears have. You're looking at length, you're looking at physical, you're looking at good athlete, and you're looking at a guy you're just going to play hard, and that's something you're looking at in the interior defensive line with both of those picks. At corner with Tyrique Stevenson, at right tackle now with Darnell Wright. I think all four of those guys fit those molds perfectly. So uh, it's a good draft. I'm not gonna act in like, oh, this is a Howie Roseman Philadelphia Eagles master class of drafting. Watch out, the league's on notice. But it's a good draft. It's a good draft, and I'm excited to see what they can do on day 3. But yeah, no, I'm sitting pretty with where the Bears are at.
All right, last question then. Who is your favorite pick of these four? It doesn't necessarily who's going to be the best player, but the player they selected at the time. Obviously Darnell Wright is most likely going to be the best player of the four.
Yeah.
That's just, that's just the safe bet there. But who was the pick when they made it that your initial reaction was the most excited?
I'd say Tyrique Stevenson.
I would agree with that. That's me too.
That's my favorite of the bunch. Premium position, fits a position of need, plays his ass off, just checks a lot of the boxes. I feel the most confident that he's going to be a solid starter of the day 2 picks. And out of, even including Darnell Wright, at least on my board, Tyrique Stevenson was the best value that the Bears got with all those picks.
All right. Well, there he is, everybody. Jacob Infante at Jacob Infante 24. If somehow you are not following him yet, make sure you do, because there's some fun tweets that come out. Jacob,
not safe for work sometimes, for sure. But
Jacob, thanks for breaking down all these podcasts, and we're gonna hit up another one tomorrow for round 4. Thanks so much, and bear down. All right, everybody. Awesome. Hope you enjoyed the live stream. Jacob, thanks so much. Of course, if you caught these in the middle, they're all going to be up on the Windy City Gridiron podcast channel here in just, within the next 10 minutes. So make sure you check those out. And then, like I said, make sure you follow Jacob and ask him any questions if you got anything, because he's the guy. Yeah. All right.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.